game here through Saturday's contests, and it should be a fun time. Oh, my dog's trying to get into the room here, Adam, and I see that I'm in the wrong video room, so I'm going to work on the controls here because this befuddles me every time we do this. It's something new that is wonky, but I like having the power because with power comes great responsibility, Adam. Were you aware of
Yes,
that?
yes, it does. Now you just need to figure out how to use it.
Using it for good and not for evil. All right. There we go. We should be all set and all peachy keen hunky dory. But we've got 6 games here. But while we're waiting for some of our fans to come in and join us, let's talk a little bit about just what the heck happened in last night's pseudo trade here with the Wizards, the Grizzlies, and Phoenix, with the aborted, after it was leaked and announced, the aborted Trevor Ariza, Picka Brooks, and Oubre with some picks deal. So kind of what happened, I went back and read a bunch of articles about this morning. Memphis and Arizona never talked to each other, and Dillon Brooks was part of the deal, but they were going through, wait for it, Ernie Grunfeld, and somehow lost in translation, they thought they were trading Marshawn Brooks, which is who Phoenix wanted. So it was Dillon Brooks, Wayne Selden, picks were going back and forth, swaps were going back and forth. Rivers, Oubre were going to change teams, and there were some picks. And Phoenix saw it come out, and Memphis saw it come out on social media, and they're like, we're not talking about the same Brooks here. So they had to pull the trade back after all the players had been informed, Adam, and the league had been informed. Memphis and the Suns sent in the paperwork or the electronic work, and they had different players on it because of Marshawn and Dillon Brooks. You know Grunfeld didn't know they had 2 Brooks on Memphis. There's no way he knew that.
Yeah, I mean, the first, or not the first thing, the first thing I thought about was why the hell are we trading Kelly Oubre for Trevor Ariza? The
Yes.
second thing I thought was you already have this Wizards team with chemistry issues, to say the least, and now you have Kelly Oubre and Austin Rivers being traded, but not really traded. I'm sure that's going to do wonders for the locker room. Would love to just be there to see what's going on with the Wizards right now.
Yeah, it looks like it just a completely botched deal. Now, when it first came out, I thought somehow we were trading a first round pick for Trevor Ariza because that's the Grunfeld move, much like they did with Bojan Bogdanovic. And I was going to get mad. I had not realized that Kelly Oubre was on the last year of his deal. So it's not as bad of a deal with the pieces because I think Rivers might even be on a 1-year contract. Ariza is on a 1-year contract. So it's just dead caps or freed up cap space moving around, etc. And they don't think they can pay Kelly Oubre next year because, they're paying Otto Porter as their highest paid player. And John Wall's mega deal kicks in. So this is.
I thought Oubre had one more. I thought Oubre had an option year left, and then was a restricted free agent. But I could be wrong.
Potentially. I was just skimming. It was funny. ESPN put the timeline together with tweets from the various reporters of theirs, like Woj and Zach Lowe and some of the other guys, and players were just sending out emojis, and it was pretty funny. It was pretty funny.
Yeah. The one positive, or I guess the disappointing thing that fell through is that Austin Rivers is still on the Wizards today. That was a nice piece of that trade.
Yeah, and then somehow the Wizards lost to Brooklyn, so they are now. God, I think they're in 10th. They're only like 2.5 games out of 8. But I don't know what's going to happen. They're going to end up losing in the first round to Toronto or Boston if they even make the playoffs. So such a mess.
I'd be shocked if they don't make the playoffs, but I don't think they're going anywhere once they do.
Yes, that's fair. That's fair because the other teams haven't really started tanking in earnest yet. So the Wizards are trying. The other teams don't give a crap, and the Wizards still can't win. So anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. But let's talk today's slate. We do have a 5:00 game in Mexico City that is going to be with Orlando, who played 2 nights ago in Mexico City, and they're taking on the Jazz tonight. So it's kind of a home deal for them. I think it's kind of neat that the same team is playing somewhere twice because it's a lot of NBA travels all across everywhere. But I think it's a little easier on the players once they get up to altitude. Plus, they're playing Utah, who is already the second highest city in the NBA. Now, the elevation in Mexico City is off the charts. I mean, what are they, like 7,000 or 8,000 feet? It's something crazy like that. It's a couple thousand more than even Denver. But anyway, I thought that was kind of fun and interesting. But we're not going to muck around with that. It looks like most of the sites are just doing that with uh, uh, single game slates. So we'll go from there. Chat thinks I look like a Bond villain, paralyzed in my chair. That is good. I'm sponsored. Wait for it. I'm wearing a Fireball shirt today.
Oh God!
Guess where I got that from? Yes, pour one out for Fantasy Shane. That was some of the swag he shared with us. But yeah, I got to work on this camera stuff because I'm trying to get Adam and I sized similarly on in the screen, and it just doesn't work. So that's why we were a little late today. But I'm aware I look silly. I laughed that I got this gamer chair. I didn't think about the fact that everybody would be seeing it when I was on air. Silly me, because whatever. But it's comfortable. Adam, I've got a nice little lumbar support. It's mesh back. I've got a little head pillow that you can move around. It's very slick. I can tilt back. I've got it nicely supporting me. I have no more knee and ankle issues because I would always sit funky up at my desk. So it's pretty slick, and I feel relaxed. So shout out. I think the brand name is called is it Respawn? I'm trying to read it backwards on a tiny thing, but $150. So if you're looking for a chair and you spend a lot of time in your desk and you have a crappy chair, go look online. I went to Staples and they had like 24 different chairs sitting out there, and I figured I'd pick, an office type chair, but I sat in all of them, and this was the one I liked, Adam, and it was on sale for Black Friday, but they also have it at Costco, usually regularly about $175. So I was expecting I was going to have to spend $300 on a chair or something. Once I found it was $150, I'm like, why didn't I get this a couple years ago? Because that other chair I was sitting in was garbage. But there we are. All right, enough about this. Let's talk some games here. The Lakers and Charlotte will be the first one we talk about. They're going off with the 227 over-under. The Lakers are 2-point favorites on the road. And somehow Charlotte lost at home to the Knicks in overtime based on, let me look. Oh, God. Emmanuel Mudiay scoring 34 points. Kevin Knox with 20. And Tim Hardaway Jr. only 12. How bizarre, Adam. How bizarre. But Charlotte starters played relatively heavy minutes, but not extreme. We have Williams was at 37, Batum was at 39. Zeller had an outstanding 20 and 10 game. He was at 37 minutes. Kemba was at 41. Lamb was at 38. We know this is going to be a pace-up game. I think this probably helps out the Lakers a little bit if Charlotte's going to be a little tuckered out in this one. I don't think it'll have too much of an impact since it was back-to-back at home here for Charlotte. But let's start with Charlotte. Do the minutes concern you for Kemba, Lamb, and probably Cody Zeller will be the three I think we're going to look at here?
Not a ton. I mean, it's not great, obviously, but like you said, it was a home game. It didn't go to double overtime or anything like that. So I'm not overly concerned about it. I think that the guys that I would have liked anyway, I still like. Kemba, the price tag's a little expensive. It's not really a spot that I would want to go to in cash games, I don't think. But the upside's certainly there against the fast-paced Lakers team that they actually have been surprisingly good defensively in terms of efficiency. It's just that they allow so many possessions that it's still a beneficial spot for fantasy purposes. So I like Kemba. Jeremy Lamb, I think, is way too cheap though. Got another, like 32 minutes in regulation last night. Even with MKG back, and he's just been playing well lately. He has a 22% usage rate over the last month, but also contributing some rebounds and some assists. As long as you get him in that 30 to 32 minute range, I think he's just still a little bit underpriced for this spot. And then Cody Zeller, coming off of a monster game last night, obviously shouldn't expect that here, but despite the fact the Lakers play fast, and I think people have a tendency to think of them as, a small team because of that, they're playing traditional centers for nearly 48 minutes. So between JaVale McGee and Tyson Chandler. So Cody Zeller should once again be able to get out there for around 30 minutes here at still a sub 5K price tag. So that's appealing. And if you need Nick Batum, that's fine. The price is down low enough where 32 to 34 minutes of Nick Batum should get you to where you want to be. It's just that he doesn't really do anything anymore, and he doesn't come with a ton of upside. So he's still not a priority for me, but I don't, dislike him at this price.
All right, that is more or less where I'm landing on just keeping those cores, but I can't bring myself to go to Nick Batum. Just too many disappointments. I see in chat they're saying that it was his birthday yesterday.
Who?
Batum. That
Yeah.
might have been why he got 21, 6, and 7. I don't. It's fun to mention these things, but I don't know. I've been very disappointed in Batum lately. But price. It's all about price, opportunity, and matchup. So we have to look beyond our personal biases, which is why I've been enjoying utilizing the Fantasy Cruncher add-on here, because it takes a lot of your preconceived notions out of things, and you'll end up on players that you may not have if you were hand building some of the stuff. So I think it's interesting to look at that. Now you can always tweak things, but one of the things that I've noticed is, particularly with football, a lot of times I'll take out some of these, scrubby tertiary guys, and it seems invariably then that's when they go get a touchdown. And you're like, wait a second, I got rid of him. Why did I not look into this a little deeper to figure out why he was projected where he was? Because projections aren't just averaging past performance. They're looking into matchup. They account for pace. They account for home court advantage. They account for potential occurrences, not just what actually happened in the box score. So it's like Adam likes to talk about the assist opportunities, rebound opportunities, etc. Because just if you had the opportunity, sometimes you're going to get it, sometimes you're not, and you want to know if somebody had 15 rebound opportunities and they got 3, you'd say, oh, it's Brook Lopez. But you also like to see if they only had 7 rebounds and got all 7, you're like, oh wait, they won everything. So just putting that out there as something that a lot of people that are new to this don't consider very often. All right.
Yeah.
On the other side,
trust your projections. Computers are smarter than you are.
Yes. On the other side, LeBron James is checking in as probably the best play on the slate is the key, but he is up there with his price, but he's also got a very nice matchup here. We know that Brandon Ingram is still going to be out for a couple more games, no Rajon Rondo, so he is being forced to take the load onto himself, and he is someone, I think amongst those guys at the top, it's kind of him and Westbrook. I'm leaning towards LeBron. How are you approaching your studs tonight? Is LeBron at the top, or is he just one of a couple you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think that LeBron's a great spot here against Charlotte. The price tag's still affordable. He's 10,700 on DraftKings. Without Ingram and Rondo on the floor this season, still a 34% usage rate and a 37.7% assist percentage for LeBron. You're seeing him play all of the minutes that Lonzo Ball's not on the floor as well. So you get more ball handling with that second unit for LeBron as well. So I think, just still a really, really good play here. The price tag hasn't come up enough to account for his current situation. So absolutely love LeBron here.
All right, I'm laughing here because somehow I got rid of all my oh, that's why. Okay. Oh, silly me. Filters, Adam. The computer is smarter than me. It's doing exactly what I told it to do last night when I was setting up my draft queue for the lineup. So there we go. Now we're back and cooking with gas. Looking at the rest of the Lakers here, there is some interest in me for Kyle Kuzma. Now he's 7,800 here on DraftKings. There will be some fine plays that pop up because it is the NBA, and there seemingly always is. He is coming off a stretch here where he's got 7 straight games of 40 fantasy points, which is outstanding. He has been scoring like crazy. In that stretch, all but one of those games, he has more than 20 actual points. He's been dropping in some threes, getting some rebounds, and then helping out a little bit with the hustle stats. But he's someone I'm still intrigued by. Now, I know we talked about him a little bit on the podcast, and the valid point being, his price is up there, but I feel that the ownership will correspondingly be lower than what I think this is for the matchup. So he's one of the guys that I like as a secondary type core play. What are you, now that you had a night to sleep on it, what are you looking at with Kuzma?
So the thing with Kuzma, it's not that I dislike the spot for him or anything like that. The opportunity is certainly there, playing 36 to 38 minutes a night. He has a 25% usage rate without Rondo or Ingram on the floor, which is good to see. But it's still the price point. But also comparing him to other guys on his team, if you look at DraftKings pricing, you have Kuzma at 7,800, as you alluded to, which by itself, it's not, it's not egregious. It's not too expensive, but it's certainly not too cheap either. But you have LeBron underpriced at 10,700. You have Lonzo still sitting at 5,600, which if he's going to get 34 to 36 minutes, it doesn't really matter what your opinion of Lonzo is. If you just put rates into your projections, it's going to tell you it's a good play. And then, even JaVale McGee at 4,700 coming off of a 30-minute game, he projects really well on a permanent basis here. So you have three guys on this team, and that's without even getting to Josh Hart. But you have three guys here who are pretty clearly underpriced for their matchup and their potential role. And then you have Kuzma, who, if anything, is a little bit overpriced, probably, more or less correctly priced. So it's tough to prioritize Kuzma even amongst that team. I'm not planning on playing four guys from the Lakers here. And on a point per dollar and an upside per dollar basis, I would rather go to LeBron, I'd rather go to Lonzo, and I'd rather go to McGee.
All right. Valid points. Chad is mentioning that perhaps Batum drank too much French wine last night celebrating his birthday. Now that is something I think we need to be cognizant of. It's the day after. It's the hangover effect, if you will. I'm going to drop a little link here in chat. Probably 3 or 4 years ago, I was working for a different DFS site. Shout out to Roto Grinders. There you go, fellas. This is a blog I wrote kind of as a joke because we were really getting into birthdays and bobbleheads. So I went and took a promotional calendar and looked from that point in the season forward, and I highlighted various people's birthdays and bobbleheads. So we were trying to track and see if it really made a difference. True story, it doesn't make a difference. You just remember the good ones is what happens. So... but that's kind of fun to look at some of the players that were mentioned because Caron Butler is the first guy I talk about. So, yikes, how the NBA landscape has changed. Okay, let's move along here to our next game. Reminder, if you are new to the show, you can utilize the promo code DFS Strategy and get a full week of all Osmo Premium Access content that includes Slack and the Fantasy Cruncher add-on. If you go to the Osmo Join tab in the upper right, click on that, choose a package, pick one that has the Osmo add-on or the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, fill in your information, and then the last little field, put in DFS Strategy, all one word, and you will get one free week of everything. And it's a lot of stuff here that you can look at and try out. My favorite thing that we have is probably the ownership projections, which is something that I've been utilizing more and more as we get into this kind of fun mass multi-entry. And it's very helpful when you're looking at NBA because you want to know where the masses are. Where is the herd going? Because you want to find your certain spots where you can zig when everybody's zagging. So if you have, tonight, if it's LeBron, all of a sudden it's gonna be like, oh my gosh, he's gonna be on 50% of everybody's lineups. Maybe, and Westbrook's only gonna be on 25% of the lineups. And you look at your numbers and say, well, how often is LeBron gonna best Westbrook or vice versa? You might want to say, well, I'm gonna look over here and I'm gonna take Westbrook because the triple-double upside, et cetera, yada, 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 all of that is better than LeBron's situation. And that's how you can gain an advantage on the field because you want to look at the probability of your pivot move outscoring the player that you're moving away from. So these are all factors that you want to look at, but this is something that's very helpful, not only looking at some of the higher-owned players, but you can also find some gems down there that might be falling through the cracks for some people. Now, that conversely, if you have a great play and they're only going to be 5% owned, that doesn't mean you play 50% of them. You really only need to, quote, get up on the field by playing 15% of them or so. This is if you're building a lot of lineups. When you're hand building stuff or you're only doing 10 lineups, you want to take that into account a little more. So if you had if the field had a 5% owned play, but you really, really liked him and you were just building 10 lineups, you may end up with that person on 3 lineups. That's not a crazy outcome. But as you play more and more lineups, it's an intriguing mathematical probability. Adam, this was supposed to be fun, not an exercise in brain power. Very sad. Boston, Detroit. Boston 2.5-point favorites there on the road. We have some news and notes here for Boston. They are likely going to be without Al Horford. He is dealing with a sore left knee. I have a feeling he's going to miss a couple games still. He's already missed 4 or 5. So I'm going to operate as if he is not going to be on the court. On the other side here, we've got a lot of information from Detroit. We have Ish Smith, who's still expected to miss a couple more weeks. He is dealing with a groin injury. Reggie Bullock sprained his ankle in practice. He is most likely going to play, but that's just something to consider. Of course, Glenn Robinson III is out with his own ankle injury. Looking at all of this here, normally this wouldn't be the most exciting matchup for me, but I do think that with Horford not being there and some of the younger guys and Baines manning the pivot, this seems like it's a pretty good spot for the Detroit front court. If you were looking at Griffin or Drummond, do you prefer one over the other?
Whichever's cheaper on whatever site you're playing. Kind of been my approach all season long, but still my approach here. I mean, Drummond, if they were equal price point, I would prefer Drummond just because he can grab rebounds against his front court and put it in the basket, and that's basically what he does, and that's all you really need him to do. All things equal, I would prefer Drummond, but at 8,500 on DraftKings, I really like the price tag there. Pretty nice spot for him. So it's not a matchup that you love against Boston, kind of regardless of who's in. Like Baines is perfectly fine. He'll probably play his 16 minutes. Then you'll get some combination of Daniel Tice and Robert Williams. But I think that there's plenty of upside for Andre Drummond here.
Would you play Griffin and Drummond on the same lineup?
Probably not too much, just because I don't have either of them projected highly enough that I think they would be popping into many lineups together.
All right. Looking at the backcourt here, does anybody move to the That was a bad choice of words. Does anybody move to the forefront from the backcourt? Looking at the guards, we have Kennard, as I mentioned, a little dinged up. Reggie Bullock, a little banged up with an ankle injury. We've got Langston Galloway lurking there in the wings. Reggie Jackson, 5,100. That feels like a pretty nice price here, and while it is a tougher matchup, we've seen that sometimes the individual matchup with Kyrie Irving guarding you can be a favorable one. We've seen Jackson bounce around serviceably with 25 to 30 fantasy points in most of the last 10 games he has played. That seems like a reasonable number to shoot for here, and that's something that I am kind of interested in. What do you like here with Reggie Jackson, if anything?
Yeah, I think the price tag there is just really appealing. The minutes have fluctuated even with Ish Smith out. Sometimes you're seeing 27, 28 minutes. Sometimes you're seeing him push 32 to 34. But the price tag's low enough where even if we do get the bottom end of that minute range, we should be okay. Over the last month, last 14 games for Reggie Jackson, averaging 0.96 fantasy points per minute, a 24.1% usage rate, a 26% assist percentage. We've actually, over that span, seen him pass Blake Griffin in terms of assist percentage, which was something that we were not seeing earlier this season as Blake Griffin just dominated potential assists. We're seeing Jackson be more involved there, which helps to raise his floor because he's not just entirely scoring dependent. He is someone that if he's playing well, he does tend to get a few extra minutes, as I mentioned, too, which does give him some more upside. So I think he's pretty much priced to his floor at 5,100. It obviously is a tough matchup against a strong Boston, team defense. And also it doesn't help that Detroit's wings are not really good at scoring. So it's not really that difficult for them to put like Marcus Smart on Reggie Jackson if they want to, and, move Kyrie to want to go stand in the corner with someone. So it's still a tough matchup for Jackson, but I just think the price tag factors that in, and there's more upside than downside to him at 5,100.
Marcus Smart, you mentioning his name reminded me, he did not score a single point last night. He only took 2 shots from the floor. Both were from three-pointers. 27 minutes, but he did have 7 assists and 4 steals. That's just an odd-looking box score there. The other one I was looking at is Aaron Baines. They did say he's only going to play 14 to 16 minutes. He only played 14 minutes. Only took 4 shots. That's just weird that 2 of your starters combined for 6 total shots here, and you're not, a team that's it's set up generally that they spread things out a little bit more. It's just kind of odd how that transpired. Looking at anything else in this contest here, Adam, that catches your eye, or shall we continue on moving?
No, not particularly. I mean, if we get Reggie Bullock back, that obviously just eats into the minutes of guys like Luke Kennard and somewhat Langston Galloway. So yeah, it's really just Blake, Drummond, and Reggie that I'm interested in.
All right. Reminder, hey, 24 days of giveaways. After the show, if you leave a comment at the bottom of the YouTube channel, you will be entered in the daily drawing. The winner will get 1 month of their fantasy sports choice, be it NBA, Nash, hockey, basketball, football, etc. A 1 month premium package from Osmo, just free. All you gotta do is leave a comment after the show. We'll come up with the topic as we go through. We had some fun ones yesterday. Favorite all time mascot was one, and then we did favorite Christmas movies. Adam, we had some fun ones in that one. People were using that rather liberally, but that was one of our more commented things. So we have to top that. I think we got 50 comments for that, so we'll have to try something different. In the meantime, if you just want to hit a little thumbs up, give us a like. We appreciate that. It does help us out behind the scenes with the fun stuff here on YouTube. And if you're already an Osmo subscriber and you win the contest, no problem. We have a swag store with Osmo.com merchandise. You can see what we have there at shop.osmo.com. Anything that you like, you get one item if you are the lucky winner. So you can choose that, or you can choose a 1 month package of content. Adam, Houston and Memphis. That heavy sigh is me trying to consider what I'm going to do here with.
I think we missed the ball inside.
Oh, my sincere apologies. I didn't miss it. I don't want to play it. That's going to be unique. So you're right. I had transitioned over there to start talking about Baines. The one guy that does catch my eye from Boston is going to be Marcus Morris, but that's about it for me. Brown, Tatum are both healthy. Hayward's back, so I think they do have reasonable minutes there. But I don't see anybody climbing to the top. Morris has actually performed relatively well against Detroit since moving to Boston, so I think he matches up nicely with them. What is your analysis telling you about the Celtics?
Yeah, so I mean, I still like Kyrie here. Obviously he was very, very productive last night in his limited minutes against the Hawks, but we're just seeing him be more assertive lately. The absence of Al Horford certainly doesn't hurt him in terms of usage or assist percentage. So I still like Kyrie. It's not a bad Detroit defense, which I think is somewhat surprising, but they've actually been relatively efficient this year. They don't play at a particularly fast pace, but I think there's still plenty of upside for Kyrie as long as this game stays competitive. But one thing that really did stand out to me was Gordon Hayward without Al Horford on the floor this season. 26.8% assist percentage. Even if you put Kyrie on the floor, it's still 25%. So, I think you get around 30 minutes from Hayward here, assuming that this game stays competitive. And he will be coming off the bench, which means he's playing some of his minutes without Kyrie, where his usage goes up as well. I think that Hayward, completely goes under the radar, but is a pretty good play.
All right. Some people are asking how we reach out to the winner. I believe that they're doing it through YouTube. There is a messaging function within there that I believe sends the email to, or sends the notification to whatever email you have. But if you want to put your Twitter handle in there, they'll just contact you that way. That would probably be easier, because I know while I do get some random notifications from YouTube, I don't always know why. So I was assuming it was going with whatever email I had registered there. But in any event, if you just want to drop your Twitter handle in there, then you don't have to worry about that, because we are making sure we contact all the winners, because it's all about giving. We want to give this stuff away. We want to encourage you guys to give Osmo.com a try behind the paywall for the really good stuff. Anything else here, or can I give my heavy sigh again about what I'm doing with Memphis?
Yeah, now you can go to Memphis.
All right, what are we going to do here with Marc Gasol going against Clint Capella and vice versa? These two behemoths have battled each other. Relatively not a ton of upside either way, but with Joakim Noah here now with the Grizzlies. That is kind of capping some of the heavy minute upside of Marc Gasol, because the Memphis has learned over the years that Gasol and Conley tend to play a lot of minutes, and then they're worn down by the latter part of the season and heading into the playoffs. So they're making a concerted effort to preserve some of Gasol's minutes, and we've seen Haxton Jackson, checking in and playing a little bit of the 5 as well. So that, to me, sort of tempers my appreciation for Marc Gasol, but DraftKings is making it somewhat tempting. He's 7,500, and we know in any given matchup he can go for 45 fantasy points. Tonight just looks like one where, yeah, he'll probably get a double-double, but I don't know how much else there. So it feels like it's a little bit capped upside. What are you going to do with Gasol in this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the minutes being down since Joakim Noah came to the Grizzlies. He actually played 35 or 36 minutes last night, which on one hand is good to see. You know, he actually got more than his 32 minutes. But on the other hand, we know that they are intentionally limiting the minutes that he plays. And now you have him on a back-to-back coming off of a 36-minute game. So I think it's probably pretty unlikely that we see him go for 36 minutes again. And it makes me, just still want to project him in that 31 or 32-minute range, which just makes it so in a really slow-paced game between two of the slowest teams in the NBA, it's tough for me to get there. I mean, the price tag on his face is appealing because we know that Gasol's so involved offensively, whether it's as a scorer or as a passer. But it's just more of a question of, this is really a more appealing spot for him than some of the guys around him at the center position. And for me, if we're only going to get 31 or 32 minutes, it's really tough to love him at that price tag.
Yes. Conley's the other guy. Now, he's been dealing with a bit of a sore hamstring. And we know that from time to time we do get some random sits for him. With regards to this particular matchup, I am intrigued because Conley is oftentimes, I think, someone that is forgotten about in the DFS world because there are flashier, splashier plays, more notable names, and just we'd like to get stars in our eyes. But he has been outstanding over his last 15 games. His worst performance, he's had 2, and they were in the upper 20s. He's had a couple, 3 forays over 50 fantasy points. One of those was being 60. So he's hovering right around 40 fantasy points a game over his last 15. Now, the results haven't necessarily been there for the Grizzlies because they've been losing a chunk of their games, being 7 and 4 in that particular, losing 7 of the 11 in that stretch. They're struggling, Adam, and they did play last night. Do you have any concerns about Conley?
I mean, I don't like the pace of this game, but I do think he's appealing just because he's kind of in a dead price range. You have Kyrie Irving above him at 8,900, Conley at 7,700. It's kind of just by himself, and he should play around 34 minutes here. He obviously is a high usage guy. He's one of the focal points of their offense. So I think that I'll probably end up getting some Conley simply because there's not a lot of other guys in that price range. So he'll be the guy that I end up on when I need a point guard around there.
All right. And then the other thing that you want to be cognizant of, the Wizards are still trying to get this deal done for Ariza, and if Memphis has not been completely turned off by the gaffes, the buffoonery, the Keystone Cops, whatever you want to say, then we have, if one of the Brooks moves, they don't want to trade Marshawn, but who knows how the pot is sweetened. That's going to open up some minutes in the bench. Kyle Anderson would probably come more into play. Wayne Selden may or may not be a part of that deal as well. So that's something we'll want to keep an eye on throughout the day. Any other tertiary plays here for you from Memphis?
Nothing that you should feel super confident in. But if you're playing a bunch of lineups, I can't imagine not having some Kyle Anderson or some JaMychal Green just because they're cheap enough where their minutes or their production, depending on which one you're talking about, definitely fluctuate. But in the case of JaMychal Green, he's been a key rebounder for Memphis. He's getting minutes over Jaren Jackson for that reason. So his minutes have been, reasonably productive. It's just a matter of where between 22 and 28 minutes he comes in any given night. And then for Kyle Anderson, the minutes have been more consistent. But Kyle Anderson just isn't a very productive basketball player from a fantasy standpoint. So you have to, if you're playing him at this price, you're going to just have to live with a bunch of disappointing games. But the nice thing about him is that he does contribute rebounds. He does pick up assists. So if you happen to run into a night where he scores a surprising amount of real points, he can put up a much bigger game than a lot of guys in that low 4K range. So both of those guys are like players that I would have some exposure to and feel, I think that I should have exposure to across a bunch of lineups. But if I'm like single entering or trying to make some sort of optimal lineup, neither one of them are coming close to it.
All right, that makes sense. Moving over to the Houston side, James Harden is going to be one of our candidates for the top 3 or 4 raw point options under most scoring systems and most projection systems. He is at 11,100 on DraftKings, coming off a fantastic 70. Oh, I'm sorry, I shortchanged him. 86 fantasy points. He had a 50-point triple double, 50 points, 10 boards, 11 assists. You know what's really cool about that, Adam? He almost got 100 points on DraftKings. I think we're going to see someone reach that plateau between now and the end of the year.
Hopefully, Giannis.
Hopefully, yeah. Giannis was in the mix there. Embiid, 50 points in the first half. He ended up with the 40 and 20, and they lost. But there's just been some insane numbers coming up recently, and I just have a feeling someone's going to uncork one here, and those are always slate breakers when it happens. Talk to me a little bit about Harden. He has been having to take on more and more of the load, which is no surprise the way they have constructed this team. We have Eric Gordon's a little dinged up again. He moved into the starting lineup, and then hold on, let me get to the injury page here. We have James Ennis is going to be out for a couple of weeks. The change to move Gordon into the starting lineup happened prior to that injury. Gordon's dealing again with the sore knee. We know that Marquise Chris is out of the picture here. What do you like for Harden? Because he's right now, he and LeBron are my 1 and 2 because they're not coming off back-to-backs like Russell Westbrook is.
It's completely dependent on ownership for me. I hate the matchup here against Memphis just because, again, it's just such a slow, unappealing game, and it's a good Memphis defense. That's not to say Harden doesn't have a monster ceiling. We talk a lot about how difficult matchups don't change your ceiling. James Harden still has a ridiculously high ceiling. It just lowers his probability of hitting it. The fact that he's going to get less possessions in this game than the Rockets did against the Lakers. He's playing a better defense here. So it just lowers the probability, but everyone knows that. And so what you'll see happen in a lot of cases is that you'll get a lot of ownership on LeBron. You'll get a lot of ownership on Westbrook, and Harden will kind of, be the third wheel. And in that case, just going overweight on Harden is a profitable, strategy just because his ceiling is still, no lower than LeBron's or Westbrook. So completely dependent on ownership, but approaching it from, an optimal lineup standpoint or, like a cash game perspective, I think that LeBron's clearly ahead of Harden, and I think Westbrook's ahead of him as well.
All right. Phoenix has agreed to a deal to send Trevor Ariza to Washington. The Wizards are trading Austin Rivers and Kelly Oubre directly to the Suns. It sounds like this is just a 2-team deal. This broke about 2 minutes ago on Twitter. This is looking at Adrian Wojnarowski's Twitter. So it looks like Memphis not going to be in this. So we'll probably see similar minutes. And maybe God, this is just an interesting trade. Let's stop on that for a second. There's got to be, don't you think there's got to be a pick involved coming back from the Suns as well? Maybe a second rounder, or is this?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about NBA contracts or follow trades enough to really know. I just don't like giving up Kelly Oubre because I like Kelly Oubre.
Yeah. This is going to change some of the backcourt with Phoenix as well. We don't have to worry about that till we get to that game. We'll talk about that. The players generally it takes a couple days for these trades to be finalized because they have to clear waivers, etc. And physicals, not waivers. So they have to clear physicals. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But there you go. Get to break a little bit of news here. Back to Houston. Chris Paul, Clint Capella, sort of unappealing in this somewhat slower paced game. Only a 201 over under here. This is the lowest over under of the night. Any other guys that you're considering from Houston, assuming everybody is going to be healthy?
Not with any sort of confidence. I mean, it's just a game that I hate.
All right.
And they're not cheap. Like sometimes we see, especially with DraftKings being more aggressive lately with their dynamic pricing, we've seen some spots where it's a really unappealing spot, but the price tag's really cheap. Like even Josh Richardson against Memphis last night, but we don't see that here. I mean, Harden at 11-1, Capella at 8,100, Paul at 8K. They're down a little bit, I guess, like Capella and Paul at least, but not to the point where I think it makes up for just how unappealing of a game this is.
All right, a couple questions here in chat. One excellent statement. Yes, Washington does have the worst GM in the league. If I'm looking to see if I can get it. Oh, now my computer's frozen. Awesome. Hopefully you don't lose me, or maybe some of you would be happy if I was lost. Looking at, I don't see any injury information there with McGee, but they're asking, would you go to somebody like Zubac in that situation? I don't think I would. I think I'd rather still look to Kuzma or potentially Tyson Chandler. Would you, if JaVale was out, does that move Chandler into the picture for you, or Zubac for the Lakers?
Yeah, it would be Chandler and Kuzma. It would also, I think, be a bump for potentially Frank Kaminsky, but also for Marvin Williams, because I would expect that you get a few minutes at the 5 from Marvin Williams to match up with Kuzma.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm also not seeing.
Yep. Chicago and San Antonio, Adam. So Jabari Parker has now been moved out of the rotation, which to me is just wild, especially when you consider that he is being bumped for Chandler Hutchison. This is just what has happened with Jabari Parker, for starters. Is he? I mean, he's averaging.
Chicago's going to Chicago.
Yeah, he's averaging 15.7 rebounds. He's from Chicago. You would have thought this would be a nice little dream matchup for them. I think he's probably their third best player. I guess you put Markkanen above him, Zach above him, maybe Portis, but he's still a legit player. I have
Chris
no
Dunn's
idea.
above him, and Wendell Carter's, but he's their 6th best player.
6? Okay. But would you bounce your 6th best player? Just say, we're not going to have him in the rotation. I mean, wouldn't you prop him up for trade or something like that? It's just bizarre. I don't understand Chicago.
The funny thing to me, did you see Boylan's quote about why it's tough to get Parker minutes?
No.
He was like, it's really difficult to play 3 power forwards, at the same time, which it is. And that's what every single person said, except for the decision makers in Chicago when they acquired Jabari Parker. And then, you have Boylan like, I just can't play him. It doesn't make any sense why he's on this team.
Oh, God. Congratulations, Chicago. Enjoy those Jordan championships. It's going to be a while before you're back. The one concern is Zach attack. He is going to most likely sit this one. He's dealing with an ankle injury. They're doing some tests. They don't think he'll be out for a long time, but they think he could be out for a couple of games. He is listed as doubtful. I suspect we'll probably get some more confirmation on his status coming out of shoot around. Assuming he is not going to play, Adam, let's start with the backcourt here. Chris Dunn. What are your thoughts on him? Minutes are sort of trending up after he was out with his MCL injury, and he is reasonably priced, $5,200 on DraftKings. I mean, if we get close to 30 minutes from him, that seems like it's a really good situation, even against the Spurs, who have crappy backcourt themselves and are not the defensive stalwarts that we kind of mentally think of them as anymore.
Yeah, I like Dunn. Its last game, and it's worth noting that he played the final 14 or 15 minutes of that game to get him there. They had said before the game that they were looking to ramp his minutes up, him and Bobby Portis both up in the I think it was the 24 to 26 minute range. I think Dunn finished around 26 and Portis finished around 22. But if you give him a couple more minutes here, it makes him a really appealing option. He's still relatively inexpensive, and the only thing keeping him, or the primary thing keeping him from getting more minutes as far as the rotation goes, is Ryan Arcidiacono, which is not a huge deal. Also, if Levine misses this game, it should make it really easy for Dunn to get more minutes, because he has played some time alongside Arcidiacono in addition to when Arcidiacono is on the bench. So I do like Chris Dunn quite a bit here. He's priced to where even if he were to play another 26 minutes, I think he is a perfectly fine option. But just knowing that there's upside for him to play more, I think, in this spot against one of the worst defenses in the NBA, it's pretty appealing, especially if Levine sits and you have, around 30% usage to spread out amongst the rest of the team.
Yeah, that's definitely going to make him appealing. I'm just looking at where I have him. He didn't pop on the crunch I ran here for FanDuel, but I hadn't done my own projection tweaks on that. Running that with DraftKings, where I had tweaked some of the stuff, I'm getting about 40% of him in 100 lineups. I've got him projected in this for 30 fantasy points, just figuring that's a potential tournament outcome. If you look at his last couple game logs, his minutes have been trending up. He's played 20, then 26. He was not doing great before he got injured, so there's a lot of trailing bad games in some of the algorithms here. So that's one of the situations you'll want to look at when you're doing your own projections, and you say, as Adam mentioned, if Levine is out and we've got potential minutes increase here for Dunn, who's getting healthy, may move into the starting lineup. Not a ton of great backups here in Chicago or anybody that really should challenge him for minutes. That's one of those projections that, if you look at it, you would probably want to manually tweak up or down yourself. I'm sure as these get refreshed throughout the day, that will be taken into account, and they might even, the ones I'm using might have even just projected Levine in because he wasn't ruled out yet. But that's something that you always want to be cognizant of when you're utilizing other people's work.
So Chris Dunn, since the start of last season, he's played 1,014 minutes without any of Jabari Parker, Nikola Mirotic, or Zach LaVine on the floor. He actually has a 26.5% usage rate, a 34% assist percentage. He's averaged 1.06 DraftKings points per minute. So, where he's playing alongside LaVine and you have him, he comes in with like a 21 or 22% usage projection, you're getting a pretty big bump here, assuming LaVine sits and that Parker doesn't play.
Would you like to be an NBA coach sometimes, Adam? Doesn't it just...
I would not want to deal with this mess. I would not want to be an NBA coach with Chicago's front office.
You're holding out for a better opportunity.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Looking over here at the Spurs, kind of an intriguing price point here for LaMarcus Aldridge. He has been less than stellar this season. He is averaging about 1.1 fantasy points per minute, which isn't horrible, but it's not what we generally expect from him. But he has been in the league for quite some time now. Just looking at his recent minutes, 26, 24, and 29, and those were relatively they bitch slapped their opponents. Let's go with that phrasing. So against the Clips, 125 to 87. So he only played 26 minutes there. They laid a beat down on Phoenix. Hey, who doesn't? 111 to 86. He only played 24 minutes there. And then they handled Utah rather nicely. 15-point victory there. He only played 29 minutes. And then the one before that against the Lakers, they cruised the entire game. They put up 133 points on the Lakers. So his minutes have just not been there. I think we could see them there tonight against Chicago. And at 7,900, he is definitely someone I want to give strong consideration to. I like him. I'm projecting him right now for 44 fantasy points. I think there's a wiggle room for a chance for a foray into 50. That is a bit aggressive. So I would say that's maybe like a 1 in 10 outcome. But that's something that you also want to look at with your variables when you're doing your lineup construction, because he has only crossed 40 fantasy points about 7 times in the last 2 months. That, not exciting. But I like the price. I like the matchup. I think this is going to be another win for them. So I am making LaMarcus Aldridge a big part of my plans tonight. Want to poke some holes in that, or are you coming along for the ride?
No, I mean, I agree with everything you said as far as, the recent games that the Spurs have played and the minutes that Aldridge has played. This isn't an example of Popovich limiting Aldridge's minutes. This is an example of every single night the Spurs either destroy who they're playing or they get their asses kicked. There's certainly a chance that they go out there and they run the Bulls off the floor, especially if Zach LaVine's out and Jabari Parker's not playing. You kind of lose some scoring upside from Chicago. So certainly, blowout risk whenever the Bulls are playing or the Spurs are playing, but it's factored into the price. I mean, Aldridge is reasonably priced for a matchup here against one of the worst rebounding teams in the NBA. He's in a really nice spot here. And even though the game logs suck lately, on a per minute basis, he's still been fine. He's averaging 1.13 DraftKings points per minute over the last month. He has a 27.5% usage rate. He's still the leading rebounder on the team in terms of assist percent or rebounding percentage, other than Jakob Poeltl. So there's nothing really at all to dislike about Aldridge here. I don't think, the only risk is what it has been every single time the Spurs play, and it's that the game could get lopsided one way or the other.
All right, looking at a couple other guys here, of course, have the similar, they've played the same games as Aldridge, so we have the similar blowout, lessening their minutes. Rudy Gay has been outstanding his last 4 or 5 games, but he's shooting nearly 65% during that stretch. That's not going to continue, so do keep that in mind as his price has been ticking up. He does have the ability to hit for 40 fantasy points in any game. He does contribute across all those statistical categories, which is nice, which gives him a reasonable floor. So he's someone I think we can consider as well on our short list. DeMar DeRozan, I think he's sort of the person you would go to if you're not going to be spending up on Harden and you're looking for a little bit of a differentiation play. I'm looking to see if we have our ownership projections up, but I'm guessing that we will only see DeRozan somewhere in the 15 to 20% of popularity this evening. What do you got about these the rest of the big three there for the Spurs?
Yeah, I mean, Aldridge is my favorite. Obviously we talked about him at length. Rudy Gay, even on top of the blowouts, the minutes have still been all over the place for him. Like, there have been some competitive games where he plays 26. There are other games where he plays 34. It just is an example of, you need to keep in mind all the volatility that comes with Rudy Gay. I think he's normally a more appealing play on FanDuel, simply because you have to roster 2 small forwards there, and it's not a particularly deep position. It's not one where you like a ton of guys. On DraftKings, where he's 6,400 and you're comparing him to guys at small forward, power forward, but also the other positions, because of how flexible roster construction is, it's a little bit more difficult to get to him. And for DeRozan, he has the same minutes concerns as LaMarcus Aldridge does. He's more expensive than Aldridge, which is why I give the edge to Aldridge. But still, plenty of upside here for DeRozan in a prime matchup against a weak Chicago defense.
All right, looking at our initial ownership projection run, and this will be updated throughout the day and then a couple times in the last hour as the final news comes out before the lock. DeMar DeRozan checking in on DraftKings at 21%, Aldridge at 20%, and then Rudy Gay at 9%. So that, I think, is rather appealing for all three of those guys, particularly on a slate that's, it's an adequate size, but at just 12 teams, 6 games, those are some nice numbers that the herd is not yet on. Would you be willing to play more than one Spur in a lineup amongst those three?
If I do, I'd probably want to be running it back with like Chris Dunn or Wendell Carter or something.
Okay.
Especially if we're talking about Aldridge and DeRozan.
DeRozan, yeah. All right. Now we've got a fun one here. Minnesota, Phoenix. Minnesota is favored on the road by 8.5. We know that Trevor Ariza will not be playing. That is going to bode well for the rest of the wings here. TJ Warren should get some good minutes. Robert Covington is probable. He has a sore right knee. On the other side, we know that Taj Gibson is out or is away from the team for personal reasons. So Dario Saric definitely is going to pop once you start to take into account he's probably going to see 30, 35 minutes. He's, potentially could get as many fantasy points, and he is just 4,200 on DraftKings. Let's start over here with Minnesota. What do you want to do here with the front court? We have Karl Anthony Towns in a great matchup. We've got Covington, who has just been logging some outstanding minutes, is dealing with a little bit of sore knee. And then we're going to see Dario Saric. Has not been listed that I can see as a starter yet, but should still see a massive minutes uptick now that Taj Gibson is not there.
Yeah, I think that Towns is, obviously a very, very strong play in a great matchup against a Phoenix team that struggles to rebound. They have DeAndre Ayton, who is one of the worst in terms of actually boxing guys out. He still plays like he's playing against a bunch of college players who can't just muscle through him, and doesn't really actually get his body in there. So it leads to their rebounding issues. Also, not a good defender. Karl Anthony Towns averaging between 1.3 and 1.4 fantasy points per minute since the Jimmy Butler trade and overall the season without Jimmy Butler on the floor. So I think just absolutely phenomenal spot for Towns. The price tag has come up, but we've also seen him just be incredibly low owned because he's been somewhat inconsistent and the price tag's going up. So people just go to quote unquote safer options. And it makes me really like Towns in tournaments. You mentioned Dario Saric, I think clearly a top value play, sitting at $4,200 on DraftKings. He's essentially been splitting the power forward minutes with Taj Gibson, with the exception of a couple minutes going to Robert Covington. So I would expect him to get the bulk of those minutes now. Covington probably fills in more than 2 or 3 minutes that he was getting before, and then you see more minutes for Derrick Rose and Andrew Wiggins in a trickle down effect. Would be what I expect. So I think that the Minnesota team actually becomes really interesting here. Even though Gibson himself, it's not like he's a high usage guy. He's not someone that directly impacts the rates of anyone. Just taking those minutes out, I think it gives you an easier path for Derrick Rose to get into the 30s. It gives Andrew Wiggins his 36 to 38 minutes that he used to get. And it's obviously a really appealing matchup here. So I think the entire Minnesota team is interesting, with Towns, Saric, and Covington being the top three.
And this will be kind of a nice one to run, because we're gonna TJ Warren is going to be wildly popular tonight, but I think going for a couple guys on either side of this game could be very, very prudent. I would have no issue pairing Saric with any other Timberwolf, just because there is going to be, based on his price, in relatively straightforward path, as Adam mentioned, to success. And those are the situations where when somebody gets cheap enough and all of a sudden they have the opportunity put in front of them, it's easier to pair them with other guys on their teams and not feel like it's a complete overload just because you are looking at the price per dollar, particularly with basketball here. One of the guys we mentioned or spent a little time talking about on the podcast last night, but I wanted to just have the audience today hear some of your thoughts on the changing role or the return to a more dependable Andrew Wiggins. Now, he has benefited almost as much as Karl Anthony Towns with Butler being traded. He's still logging his not the heavy minutes we saw from 2 seasons ago, but he's the last few games he's been in the mid to upper 30s. He's approaching 20 NBA points per game. He's getting some rebounds and chipping in with a couple of the other hustle and helper stats, which is something we don't always see from him because a lot of times he has empty box scores. But he's someone that I think we really need to recalibrate what our baseline thoughts about him are. Talk a little bit about the change in role for Andrew Wiggins.
I think it's just a little bit more usage without Jimmy Butler there. Overall this season, we've seen him be a little bit more dependent in terms of dependable in terms of rebounds and assists. Still a very scoring dependent player though. And with Butler leaving, you haven't really seen it translate into more fantasy points because Wiggins' minutes went down. His usage goes up a little bit, but his minutes went down as a result of Robert Covington coming in. But now I think that you get him, back into that 36 to 38 minute role that he was playing before the Robert Covington trade. And, he's averaging 0.8 fantasy points per minute since Butler left. And so, if you're going to get around 36 minutes here, I think he's a perfectly fine option.
All right, let's move over here to the Phoenix side. I see Chad is asking a little bit about Devin Booker. If you go, RotoWorld's generally one of the best places to consolidate the news. They usually will cite whichever source they have and then give their thoughts as well. And they are mentioning that Booker is he's questionable. This is the second time he's missed action with the hamstring injury, and I don't think they're going to force him back. If he does play, Adam, wouldn't we have to almost consider him being healthy and seeing his regular run? I don't think they'd rush him back early, considering how often they let him sit last year.
Yeah, I don't think they would rush him back. I'm still not overly confident that if he does come back, they just run him out there for 36 minutes again. TJ Warren, they basically, when they brought him back, they had him go like 28 minutes his first game, or they tried to before he got himself ejected. So I would expect that to probably be the case with Booker. Obviously, totally guessing, and what Phoenix does or does not do is I don't think they know most of the time until like right before the game. But yeah, I mean, if he comes back, I assume he plays in that like 28 to 30 minute range, unless we hear otherwise.
All right. The other guy who's dinged up on Phoenix is Josh Jackson. He has a big toe that he sprained. So those guys are probably going to be game time decision. We do know that Trevor Ariza has been traded. He actually, I think, had left the team yesterday because they thought he was going to be going to Washington. So he was unlikely to play at this point. I would be willing to bet with almost 100% certainty that Oubre and Rivers won't be active or playing this one. I don't think they can get everything done quickly enough, and Phoenix is content to lose, so why rush those guys in? So that's going to give us a lot of TJ Warren. If Booker is out, that's going to keep Melton in the starting lineup. It's going to keep Jamal Crawford relevant. We're going to see some Troy Daniels. This is, the opportunity is sort of going to be endless here for the available minutes for Phoenix. God only knows what they're going to do with them. But let's assume Booker is out and we know Ariza is gone. Talk to me about the guards.
Yeah, so I mean, DeAnthony Melton, we've seen for the most part be consistent this year. He had a bad game. I believe it was the last time out against Dallas. But the opportunity is certainly still there for him. There's just not players to take the minutes away, especially if he's playing well. The price tag is fair. It's not 300 from a couple of games ago against, I think it was the Spurs, where it was basically impossible to get away from him. There are pivots in this price range, whether it be Chris Dunn or Reggie Jackson or Lonzo Ball. All these guys around him that'll keep my exposure to Melton lower than it was like last slate when there wasn't really much around him that was appealing. But he's overall this season, he's been between a 0.9 and a 1 fantasy point per minute player. And he's been a relatively high usage guy, up around 23, 24%. He has an assist percentage up around 26.5%. So he's been involved, and I don't want to take too much away from the fact that he had a bad game this time out. Just he's young and probably being, but all been relative for who he is. So I think Anthony Melton's fine. I think that TJ Warren at 6,600 and Josh Jackson at 5,500 are also very, very strong plays. With Ariza out, assuming Booker also misses.
All right. Looking at sorry, you were breaking up a little bit there. Did you touch on Ayton at all and Warren?
No, I didn't say anything about Ayton. He's fine. The thing that concerns me is just that the minutes have been all over the place lately, and it's coincided with him saying that he hit the rookie wall and was tired. So it's tough for me to project him for as many minutes as he was getting earlier this season. It's not a bad matchup here, obviously against this Minnesota front court led by Karl Anthony Towns, but I would put Ayton behind Warren and Jackson and pretty close to Melton. Without Booker and Ariza on the floor, you do get an uptick in production for Ayton, which is nice and certainly makes him appealing, at least in tournaments. Without Booker on the floor this season, DeAndre Ayton, trying to run the numbers now, but DeAndre Ayton has averaged 1.1 fantasy points per minute, 22.7 usage percentage, 18.1% rebounding percentage, 18% assist percentage. So you've seen him be very involved across the board. It's just a minutes issue for me where I'm not super confident that he gets a ton like that he gets, into like that 32 to 34 minute range.
All right. Looking at some of their cheap guys, and I don't think these guys really come into play unless Jackson or Booker is out, but if either one of those guys is out, I think you can take a flyer on Mikal Bridges. He is disappointing from time to time, but he does have a $3,700 price tag on DraftKings, and he does get, if he gets 20 fantasy points, that's going to be a solid performance from him. Rashawn Holmes is the other guy who's been seeing steady minutes. His price has crept up now to 4,000, so that's more of a salt to taste, but we do only have 12 teams in the player pool tonight, so I think those guys in one of the more exciting games tonight could be a tertiary play, so I would make sure to get them in your lineups if you're going to be playing a lot. Anything else here with this game?
I think there's a chance you get like 22 minutes from Troy Daniels. But again, he's 3,400. It's still Troy Daniels. He could do well. He probably won't. But it's just worth mentioning that, assuming Booker is out with Ariza out, I think you could get Troy Daniels, playing around 22 minutes again.
All right. 24 days of giveaways. Again, if you leave a comment after the show, the little comment section will appear here on YouTube. Give us a like, leave a comment. Today's comment is, what is your favorite Christmas song? For me, it is the, acoustical version of Sleigh Ride by Boston Pops. So that is my all-time favorite. It is a classic. It's peppy. It's exciting. And you even get to hear the whip cracking as they go through it. And I like it without the words. So there we are. Adam, do you have a favorite holiday song?
I mean, anything by Adam Sandler.
Okay. This is absolutely fair. Yeah. Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. There's a lot of good novelty songs here. 12 Days of a Redneck Christmas. Christmas Rapping by the Waitresses. There's a blast from the 80s past for you. If you heard it, Adam, you would say, oh yeah, I've heard this song before. But it's kind of...
Okay, I'll say that does not ring a bell.
It's kind of peppy. It appears every time. The most overplayed song, probably Last Christmas. I prefer the version by George Michael and Wham, but Taylor Swift has redone it. I think Carly Rae Jepsen's done it. So it's... did a lot of driving over the last week, Adam, and listening to the holiday stations. You kind of like, how many Christmas songs are there? Because I think I hear this one about every 30 minutes. So.
Yeah, I do everything I can to not listen to Christmas songs.
Yeah, I'm good. I don't think I need to hear anything between now and next year after spending many hours in the car when I was on my vacation trip last week. Last game of the night, the Clippers, the Oklahoma City Thunder. We have Russell Westbrook is going to be checking in as one of probably the top 4 raw options here for points. He is the highest priced player on DraftKings. Paul George, his price has crept up as well. He is now at 9,200. He has definitely earned it. On the other side, we have dipping somewhat Tobias Harris, Danilo Gallinari, Montrezl Harrell. What are you going to look at here amongst these plays? Let's start with Westbrook and George.
Yeah, I mean, Westbrook, obviously one of the top plays on the slate. That goes without saying. It's a game with a much more appealing total and more possessions available than that Houston game, which, I think is the difference for me between Westbrook and Harden. It's just a better spot for him going against the Clippers here. Yeah, he's coming off of a back-to-back, but I'm not overly concerned with that. If he gets around 38 minutes here, I haven't projected it about 60, 61 fantasy points, which, obviously is pretty good. So I like Westbrook quite a bit. In tournaments, obviously you can get a low-owned Paul George, and we've talked about him a lot, where with Westbrook being back, it's clearly not as great a spot as it was for him when Westbrook was out, but he still has, a 27.5% usage rate since Westbrook's come back. His assist percentage is still up around 18.5%, 19%, and he's still going to play between 36 and 38 minutes in competitive games. So getting him as a low-owned tournament play still gives you plenty of upside. And then, one other thing that I think is actually appealing here is, Steven Adams is coming off of a monster game last night. And normally he's not someone that I really like rostering all that much because the opportunity cost at center is so high. And Adams is someone that doesn't normally give you 50 or 55 fantasy point upside like some more capable scorers do. But on this slate, with it only being 6 games, with guys like Marc Gasol and Clint Capella being in unappealing spots, even Andre Drummond in a less than appealing spot, the center position is not quite as strong as normal. And this is a spot against the Clippers that I do like for Adams because Marcin Gortat isn't a good rebounder. Montrezl Harrell is too small to do anything to stop Adams. Boban is Boban. So, I mean, it's just a spot that I really like Adams' rebounding upside here. And I think that there's lower opportunity cost of the position, so it makes it more appealing for me to roster Adams.
Yeah, he was a stalwart in my teams over there on draft because I was able to get him in the later rounds, usually the 5th round last night. So that was a lot of fun when he put up that gigantic game to help offset all of the teams that I did not have Joel Embiid on. So let's see. Before we continue on here, I want to give a quick shout out to Yahoo. They are putting out a $1 million tournament for NFL Week 15. Best part about this, they're only going to collect at most $750,000. It's because they are guaranteeing $250,000, $250,000 of overlay. It's a fantastic tournament. It is $20 to get in for each entry, but you can only have 10 entries. So that means, unlike the other sites where people can play 150 entries, and you feel like you don't have a chance if you're only throwing in 1 or 2 entries into the millionaire makers there each week like I am, this is a much more level playing field. If you sign up using the promo code AWESEMO, you will get a $30 deposit match up to your first $30 if you have not yet made a deposit on Yahoo. If you already have a Yahoo account but have not played DFS, use that promo code on your first when you make your first deposit, and you will get the credit for $30 of free play. They're going to give that to you in Yahoo points. Those are usable immediately. When you're entering the contest, you can choose, do I want to use my bankroll or do I want to use my points? Very, very easy. But this is going to be a good one. I suspect it'll probably only fill up to about 30,000 people. So we could see as much as $400,000 in overlay. So as soon as the contest launches, you're going to see your money, or you're currently winning, pop by 40%, which is pretty awesome. Now you're still going to have to cash. You're going to have to get it done out there. But to help everybody out, we've got a nice free article here on Awesemo's homepage. And that also has the link if you want to go in and use that link or the promo code AWESEMO when you're making your deposit. You can get in there. This article is focusing on some of the secondary plays. You already know who the top plays are, so we're not going to rehash that. But Yahoo has a very unique pricing system. So what we've done there is we've called out some of the plays that are will help you get to those other guys. And also we gave a little sneak peek preview of Alex Baker, also you guys know him as Awesemo, of his grades. So we've put those next to the players as well and explained how to use the grades. And if I've talked about Travis Henry in that article, and he didn't get great grades, but explain why you're looking at that, because the grades are kind of done with people in a vacuum. But when you're building your own lineup, you don't get to pick A, AA prime people at all times. Back to our task at hand, Adam. Anything else here for the Thunder, or would you like to discuss the Clips?
Jeremy Grant is too cheap. He's still Jeremy Grant, so don't roster him expecting him to go out there and get you 40 points or anything. But on a 6-game slate where values, not really that there's not that much value on the slate. He's fallen to 3,900. He should still play 32 to 34 minutes here. He's facing a Clippers team that has plenty of wings for him to deal with, and Tobias Harris and Danilo Gallinari. So I think that it's just a point per dollar play with Grant that's perfectly fine at 3,900.
All right. Amongst the front court there, well, you did say the magic word on the podcast, so let's start with him. I believe the magic word of the day is Boban.
Yeah, keep an eye out for the starting lineup here. We had Gortat start, I believe, the last 2 games, but they were at least the last one was against San Antonio, which was a matchup where Boban would just get eaten alive trying to deal with LaMarcus Aldridge. But this is a prime Boban spot as far as matchups go, because Gortat doesn't want to deal with Steven Adams. Montrezl Harrell cannot deal with Steven Adams. Boban is at least big enough and everything to deal with Adams. So wouldn't be surprising at all to me if Boban gets back in the starting lineup. And on top of that, if he does get back in the starting lineup, it's a spot where I think you could actually see one of his 24 to 26 minute games, because the last couple of teams where he could match up with the starting center, but then they were most likely going to play small for most of the game, and it was going to be a situation where Harrell would easily be able to just play like all the remaining minutes at the 5. But here with Steven Adams, playing 34 to 36 minutes, I don't think it's that crazy or that unreasonable to think that you could get Boban out there into the low to mid 20s, just because it's such a nightmare for the other 2 centers on the Clippers.
All right, looking to the guards, we have some minutes opening up with Lou Williams being out for the next couple of weeks with a hamstring strain. So we have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander might be hitting the rookie wall himself. You have Patrick Beverley at an intriguing price point. Do you like any of the guards in your plans tonight here? Avery Bradley also in the mix.
Gilgeous-Alexander, I think, appealing just because we're still seeing him get the bulk of the point guard minutes. Obviously production has been inconsistent, but the minutes have been there. He played 28 minutes in 3 quarters in the blowout against the Spurs. In the first half, he played about 18 minutes. So, if you're looking at 34 to 36 minutes in a competitive game for Gilgeous-Alexander here, then that's obviously really appealing. As far as Beverly goes, it's tough to really like him because the majority of his minutes are coming with Gilgeous-Alexander on the bench. He played 26 minutes last game, but that was because he got all the garbage run in the fourth quarter. He only played about 8-9 minutes in the first half, and only like 2 or 3 of those were alongside Gilgeous-Alexander. So it makes it tough to project Beverly for more than, around 22, 23 minutes. Potentially, I guess, could get some more minutes because of Russell Westbrook, but it's tough to trust Beverly. Avery Bradley should play a bunch of minutes. Who knows what Avery Bradley does? I would rather play, obviously different positions, but similar price points. I'd rather play Jeremy Grant than Avery Bradley.
All right. If you want to do the honors and pull up Thrive, a reminder that they do sponsor quite a few of our shows here. They are a fun place to play. They have let's just call them player props. They have 20 player props in a contest. You choose 10. And then if you're right or wrong, that is how you score or how you shed a few tears. Now, you'll see when we call these up, it's based upon, it's binary, so it's one side or the other, but you get more points or less points depending on the likelihood of the outcome of what they are giving as the question. So, Adam, let's demonstrate with a couple of those, and I will drop the Thrive link into the chat for our loyal viewers here.
I don't think there's anything. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, there's no NBA posted right now.
Oh, well, that's no fun. Is there a football?
Yes.
Let's do a couple football ones. We've done our articles, our research. You were on a featured guest on a podcast last night. If you want to mention that out there. Adam is multi-platform now.
Yeah. All right, so got NFL. Need to switch over to my NFL projections.
All right. In the meantime, reminder, we are getting ready to wrap up. So when the comment section appears here on YouTube, post your favorite Christmas song. Also drop you want to drop your Twitter handle in there. If you are the lucky winner, then that will be an easy way for us to contact you. Otherwise, we will try to message you through YouTube. But I know not everybody has probably signed up with their regular email address for that. So go ahead and drop your Twitter handle in there, and we will make sure to notify the winners. If you are one of the lucky people that is drawn today, you will have your choice of a 1-month subscription to any of the Osmo Sports, football, basketball, hockey, etc. Or you can choose something out of our merchandise collection. So if you want to see what that is, you can go to shop.osmo.com, and you can see that we have some hoodies, we have hats, we have winter caps, we have a variety of shirts. It's actually a good time. They're actually kind of neat looking. So I will be repping that at some point myself. Did you get your info up, Adam?
No, it's still loading. My computer likes to take its time.
All right, well we can go off mine, but let's chat. Let's do a couple here.
Yeah. All right. So it's got picks for the 2 games today. So start with Deshaun Watson over under 240.5 total passing yards. You get 105 points for the under.
I'm leaning a little bit towards the under. Main reason being, I think both the games that we see today are going to approach their unders for their totals. And we've last 2 games off memory, I think he has like 31 and 37 pass attempts, but he went through a stretch of like 7 games where he didn't have more than 25. So while Watson can be very efficient, we haven't seen those gigantic games from him. I will take the under on that one.
Yeah, that all sounds about right to me. Finally got mine pulled up. I have him projected for 244.5 passing yards. And since the under gets 10 more points, I would go ahead and take the under here.
All right. Yep. I got him for 237 on mine.
Yeah. So next one, and obviously related to the first one, but DeAndre Hopkins, 91.5 total receiving yards.
Ooh, Let's think about that one for a second. We got to start thinking. They have their three-headed monster there at tight end. Lamar Miller probably get about 20 yards. Demaryius Thomas. I'm going to take the over on that one. I think you want to go with your
it's
best
105
player.
points for the over.
Okay, that's fine. I'll take the over on that one. I just think more of the limited passing yards from Watson will be consolidated there with Hopkins.
Yep, I would take the over as well. Have him a little bit over 91, and the over gets more points. Going to the Cleveland and Denver game, Jarvis Landry over under 61.5 receiving yards, 100 points either way.
I am looking here. We know that Baker Mayfield is a rookie, could be feeling a little bit of the pressure. I'm guessing he's going to go for about 270, 280 yards. What did you say it was, 61?
61.5.
I'm going to take the over on that one. Once again, I think that they are getting Jarvis Landry more consolidated or more involved in the offense, and he is by far their best player because if you look at like Antonio Callaway, Rashard Higgins, Brashad Perryman, etc., they catch as catch can, and it's not very exciting. I'd be surprised if any of those guys got over 50, so I think that Landry will be the one guy that is going to get his, and I've got him for 71 yards right now.
Yep, I got the over on him by a little bit as well. All right, so last one here. Got to go to Baker Mayfield. Over under 2.5 passing touchdowns plus interceptions. 115 points for the over.
I will definitely take the over. I think there will be 2 touchdowns, and I think there will be 2 interceptions at least. So take the over.
I have him projected for the under, but not by enough where I wouldn't want to take those points.
Yeah, it's always hard when you think about the big event plays like that because, hey, great pass. Oh, he's going to score. Oh, down at the 1. Or, hey, maybe somehow Mayfield runs it in, etc. So it's fun to look at those. But there you go. That is Thrive. I dropped the link there in the chat. So we are going to get on out of here. We've got a bunch of other stuff coming up today. We have the On the Contrary. That will be with Osmo and with the great Evan Silva later today. We've got the, let me think here. We've got the Live Before Lock with Fast Eddie Fair this evening for NBA. We've got NFL tomorrow. You get Jazz Raz and Ben at 11. Then you got Spags Live Before Lock for the last hour prior to the lock. Adam's going to be working on the deep dive article. We will have the single game slate articles up for Sunday and Monday night football later on. And then right now, if you want to check out the Yahoo, you can go to osmo.com on the homepage, and there's a free article. It's got the links, tells you how you can join, how you can take advantage of the $30 deposit match from Yahoo themselves, and that is available for immediate play. So with all of that fun stuff, we're going to get on out of here. But 24 days of giveaways. The comment today, what is your favorite Christmas song? And I am going to drop the Christmas rapping song. There are no commercials on this one, but if you want to hear that, you'll all say, oh yeah, this is a horrible song, I remember it, but it's one of the novelty songs that always sticks out. With that, gamers, good luck.